Please remember that the complete information for the class that you are about to view is at eliithecomputerguy.com. Not only do we have our videos there, but we have part lists, diagrams, pictures, and even complete code examples. So if you are watching this video and you want more information, please go to eliithecomputerguy.com. Welcome back. As you know, I am Eli the Computer Guy, and in today's class we're going to go over the basic syntax structure of HTML. So HTML, Hypertext Markup Language, is the basic language that you are going to be using in order to be able to build your websites. The nice thing about HTML is that it's very relaxed in a lot of conventions, so it doesn't care about things like capitalization or white space, but it does care about tags. Within an HTML document, everything has to be enclosed within tags, and so today I'm going to be showing you how that tag system works and why it's important. So there's a bit of a warning for the class today, especially when you go to do further research to learn more about the syntax of how to design things in HTML. There have been two major versions of HTML over the past 20 years. There was HTML4 and there's now HTML5. What I'm going to be showing you today is very much in the old HTML4 mold, and the reason is because I feel that this is an easier way to teach HTML to new students. The thing is, with HTML5, some of the things that I'll be showing you today have been deprecated, but modern web browsers fully understand HTML4, and so what I'm showing you today will work on any modern or old web browser. But it is important to understand when you go out there and you start doing some further research to learn about HTML syntax is you will see notations talking about the differences between HTML4 and HTML5. It is important to understand that there are two different versions of HTML, but this isn't like Python. This isn't like other programming languages where when a new version came out, the old way was completely deprecated. We're in this weird thing with HTML where you can code in HTML4, you can code in HTML5, and more or less browsers will understand what is going on. So what I'm going to be showing you today, I'm going to be showing you things like the head tag. So in HTML5, you don't necessarily need to use the head tag, but I think this is an easy way of explaining to you how an HTML page is broken out, and then in the future you can decide basically which way you want to code. So that is just a bit of a warning. What I will be showing you today is very much in the HTML4 vein, but it's going to work for most of the things that you're going to need it for. So really the best way to start understanding HTML really is to dive right in. Again, this is a very simple markup language. What I'm going to be showing you today is the basic layout of an HTML page. I'm going to show you the head, the body, and how to enclose everything in HTML tags. I'm then going to show you how tags work, so basically how to open a tag and how to close a tag, and then I'm going to be showing you some certain things such as the fact that capitalization does not matter in HTML. So this is very important when you're dealing with HTML. A lot of times, again, when you're reading references, you'll see things that are capitalized or you see things that are lowercase. It is important to understand in the HTML world, capitalization doesn't matter. This is kind of one of the things that screws up old timers like me, because back in the day, when I learned HTML, whenever you were creating tags, you capitalized those tags. An easy way of understanding where the tags were is you capitalized all the letters in a tag, and so you could very easily be able to see that on a page. Now in the modern world, the young kids out there have decided they don't like capitalization, and so now tags are all in lowercase. As far as web browsers are concerned, web browsers honestly don't care about this. It's all just depends on what you decide to type out. So this is kind of one of those things. Again, it's a style. It's your decision on what the style is. Whether you do capitalization or whether you do lowercase, the main thing is just stick with whatever you decide to do so that it's the same within an HTML page. The other thing that's very important is that white space does not matter in the HTML world. Only tags do. So basically, when the web browser is reading your HTML document, basically it's formatting everything based off of these tags. So if you start putting things on different lines, but you don't have tags to show that these things should be on different lines, the web browser will just put everything onto a single line because, again, it's looking for the tags. All all the formatting within HTML document is all based off of tags. If you don't put a tag in, it will not be recognized by a web browser, and the web browser will simply reformat everything based off of how the tags are. So with that, let's go over to the computer and I can show you how a basic HTML document works. So here we are at my lab computer. Again, I use a MacBook for my lab computer, but in order to write out this HTML document, all you need is a basic Ascii editor. So again, in the Mac world, I'm using TextEdit. If you're using Windows, you can simply use Notepad. If you're using Linux, you can use gedit or Vim or something like that. The important thing is whenever you save the HTML document, that you always use the extension of either .htm or .html so that the computer knows how to open it. So with this, basically I have typed out this basic little web page here. I have saved it to my desktop here, and since it has that .html extension, when I double click, it opens up, and now we can see what this particular web page looks like. Again, it's not very sophisticated, but it is, a web page. So it just simply says hello world. This is a test web page. If we can expand this up here, we can see that the title of this page is test web page. So all of this has been encoded with HTML. I can also show you that if I do open with and open this with Google Chrome, we can see that basically here, again, we get that test web page, we get hello world, this is a test web page. And so again, this is the important thing with HTML, the fact that you can open up an HTML document in any web browser and it will be able to interpret it. That's what makes HTML so powerful, especially from people coming from my generation. Now, the first thing on here that I want to show you is this, this Doctype. So this used to be a lot more important. And again, one of the things you have to be thinking about when you start dealing with HTML is that HTML, again, was created back in the 90s, or really deployed back in the 90s. And back in the 90s, it was a massive mess. There wasn't the standardization the way that we have now. Again, the concept of HTML was, hey, this is a way that we can code documents, and then all of these different web browsers will be able to read the same document. And of course, when the major corporations came in, they all tried to make an open standard proprietary. You've probably heard this before with other technologies. And basically they failed, but it took them a decade to fail. Again, with all these major corporations, they spend a lot of time, money, and energy to fail sometimes. And so during the process of failing, you had a lot of issues with HTML. Again, certain web browsers would be able to use specific tags. So if you wanted to do something that Netscape Navigator would understand, you would have to use different tags than if people were going to your website using Internet Explorer and that type of thing. There are also different markup languages like XHTML, that type of deal, that have kind of fallen by the wayside. So what this up here is this Doctype. I never put this into my HTML documents. The only reason that I'm showing you this here is I realized as a good teacher to new students, I should show you that this exists. This is not something that I personally ever put into my HTML pages because, again, at this point, we're dealing with modern browsers. They understand how to deal with the HTML that I'm giving them, but you should realize that putting a Doctype here might be important. Again, if you're working in an enterprise environment, if you're going to be selling stuff to the public, if you're going to be taking a test in school, make sure to put a Doctype. And so what this does here is this Doctype says what you're going to be seeing now is an HTML file. So basically what this is telling to the web browser is everything that follows is HTML. It's kind of like no crap, Sherlock, but again, that's how the standards are. If we go over to W3 Schools, so W3 Schools talks a little bit about the HTML Doctype Declaration, and it explains it a little bit more. It shows, again, for HTML5, again, if you're going to do this, all you do is you put the Doctype HTML. But if you look back into the old days, you can see that there were these different Doctypes that you would have to put in order to tell the web browser how to interpret what it was saying. Again, this is kind of one of those things from the old days. You may see this currently just because of legacy things. Personally, I don't generally worry about the Doctype, and again, for the web page to work in a modern browser, you don't normally need to put it there. But again, if you get tested, if you have to take a test, you want to put this Doctype and then HTML at the top. Then what we're going to do is we're going to come down and we're actually going to open up the HTML web page. So basically what we're doing is we're creating this tag here. So there's HTML, and then we close the HTML page at the end. So we open HTML, and then we do this / close HTML. So this basically says everything between here, these two, is going to be in HTML. This is an HTML website. The next thing that we do is then we're going to create the head tag. So we're going to create the head component of this web page. And what happens in the head is basically you can put in information that relates to the entire web page. So you know how I showed you that title before, test web page? So if we go back here, we can see up here where it says test web page. Well, that title, we actually put that in the head. So you can put the title in the head, you can put metadata in the head, you can put script locations, CSS information, that's basically formatting information. Basically within the head is where you put everything that relates to the entire web page. So this will not be printed out like normally on the web page itself. Obviously it's not printed here. Again, this is just information that pertains to the whole web page. So we open the head, and then we close the head. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the body. And so the body is where you put everything that's going to be written on the web page itself. And so we go and we take a look at the body. We can see that I used a couple of different tags here. So I used the H1 tag. So the H1, and again, we'll talk about these tags in a future class, talking about the formatting a little more. But H1 is called the heading 1 tag. So what this says is create the heading at the top layer. So a heading 1 is like the biggest, largest type of tag on a page. So we can go here. And let's see if I do an H2, and I say this is an H2 tag, and then I close the H2, right? I can do file, I can do save, then if I go here, I can refresh, and so you say this is an H2 tag, and so it's a bit smaller than what that H1 tag is. And again, this is a way to do basic formatting on a web page. So you can have an H1 tag, an H2 tag, an H3 tag, H4 tag. I think it goes all the way down to like H6 or something. But basically, these are just like heading tags. So you would use this, you might use the H1 as a title for the page, and then an H2 as a title for a chapter, and H3 as a title for a section, something like that. So what we see here is, you know, we're going to be typing out hello world. And so whatever we're going to be typing out is in between two tags, right? So we open the H1 tag here. Then we print out whatever we want to print out, and then we close the H1 tag. So what this is telling the web browser is basically print this text using a certain format, and then the tag is over. Then we come down here, we open the H2 tag, and then it says print this, and then we're going to close the H2 tag, and then there's the P tag. So P basically stands for like just paragraph font, and so P, you know, this is a test web page, and then we close the P tag, and so that's what we have here, right? Then all you're going to do is you're going to go down, and then you're going to close the body. So you're going to close the body tag, and then obviously you're going to close the HTML tag, and then this is the web page that you get. Now I want to show you a couple of things with this. The first thing is that white space and such does not matter in formatting, right? So I just, you know, I just put in a couple of enters. I put a couple of new spaces in here, or new lines in here. I do file, I do save. And then when I do a refresh, what you'll see is on the web page, it doesn't matter, right? The tag is what matters, not the white space. So if I go back, I can go and I can put in a break tag. There's something called a break tag, right? So I simply put a break tag in there. Now I do file, save. You'll notice everything here is on one line, but then when I go to refresh, you can see it, because of that tag, it now breaks to the new line. So it's very important to understand when you're printing out in HTML, as far as the web browser is concerned, it only cares about tags. So this becomes very important. So if you're using a back-end scripting language such as PHP or Python or Ruby on Rails, and you're going to be printing out reports, not only do you have to pull the information from the database and print it out on a page, but you actually have to print it out with all the appropriate tags so that when people pull up the report on a web browser, it will look appropriate. Literally, if you just type out a whole bunch of text into essentially a text file without any of these tags, it'll just be one big, long, horrible, nasty line. So that's the first thing to remember about with this. So I can go in, I can close, or I can get rid of the break, and then one of the things I want to show you is, again, capitalization doesn't matter. So if I do capital H1, capital H2, lowercase h1, lowercase h2 here, I do file, I do save, we can go and we do refresh, and we can see that nothing has changed. Again, capitalization truly does not matter within the HTML world. Past that, then we're going to go, I want to show you what happens if you forget to close a tag. So again, let's say you open the H2 tag, and then for whatever reason, you're just, fat fingering it, and you forget to close the H2 tag. So we open the H2 tag, we go to the next line, we open the P tag, so on and so forth. What do you think will happen here? If we do file, we do save, we go here, and then we hit refresh, what we can see is everything that was supposed to be written in simply being that paragraph font is now in H2. And this is one of the problems that you can run into with what are called the WYSIWYG editors for HTML. So basically what you see is what you get, where you type everything out and it's supposed to encode everything to HTML. One of the problems you'll find is many times those WYSIWYG editors will simply forget to close tags properly, and then your entire page will look like crap, literally because one tag was forgotten. And if you don't know how HTML works, then you're not going to be able to know how to go to the source and be able to see what's going on. So this is a basic idea of how the HTML structure looks when you're looking at an HTML document. But it is important to understand that, again, HTML web browsers are not very finicky, and you don't have to do all of this to make an HTML document work. So if I do file, new, let's just strip out so much of the formatting that I was using. Let's just simply type out what I want to type out. So I can do hello world, close H1, and then we do the P like we did before, and I say footloose and fancy free. Right, so here you'll notice I'm not doing a document type. I'm not opening up the HTML. I'm not doing a title. I'm not doing a body. I'm not doing any of that. But if I simply do go to File, and then go to Save, and then I can say example.html. So again, I have to save this as .html. I'm going to save it to my desktop. I hit Save. So we have this example HTML here. If I double click on this, we can now see that it says hello world. So this is the test web page, and this is the example that I just showed you. So it is important to understand, HTML is kind of one of those things where you don't have to write out all the fancy coding. You don't have to write out the head. You don't have to write out the body. You don't have to do all of those things. That just makes it easier for people coming behind you to understand. But HTML itself is a very forgiving language. And again, basically, you can type out things like this and actually have it make it work. So a lot of times, like when I'm showing you folks projects and demonstrations, I'm not going to go through and format everything quote unquote correctly for things like when I create a form. I'm just going to create a form. I'm just going to type out the information I need for a form, and I'm going to save that, and I'm going to use that as the HTML document. So that's just kind of one of those things just to keep in mind when you're dealing with HTML. So there's a basic overview of how the HTML syntax works and how an HTML document structure should look. Again, in many ways, HTML is a very forgiving markup language, but in other ways, it can be a bit nasty and finicky. Again, it wants you to open tags, and it wants you to close tags. As long as you open tags and close tags, you'll be great. If you open a tag and you forget to close a tag, all kinds of weirdness can ensue. So what I was showing you today may seem very simple because, again, you're using H1 or P or whatever else tags. And so it seems pretty simple that, oh, okay, if I forgot to close that tag, I could pretty quickly figure out where the problem started. But do remember, in the HTML world, there are a lot of different tags that you might be using. And so when you use some of those tags, it can be a little bit more confusing to figure out where you forgot to close a tag at. end up taking a lot of time. And again, the important thing, and why I would argue most people should understand how HTML works, is because so many of these WYSIWYG editors out there, you sit there, you type out a document, it's supposed to look a certain way, and then when you go to publish it, it doesn't look how it's supposed to. And literally the reason is because that editor, for some reason, forgot to take out a tag or forgot to input a tag when you saved everything, and that kind of screws everything up. So if you can go back into the source and you can see where those orphan tags are, it's a lot easier to go back through and do some modifications. Again, a big thing to understand with HTML is you don't have to do the full HTML document structure like I showed you. You don't have to do the document type, you don't have to do the head, you don't have to do the body, you don't have to open HTML, you don't have to close HTML. That's the proper way of doing it. You literally can simply write out HTML or text with the tags into a document, save it as .htm or HTML, and more or less most modern web browsers will be able to deal with it. But again, there's the important thing to understand in the technology world is there's what you can do at home, there's what you do when you're playing around, and then there's what you do when you're typing something up, when you're creating something for a production environment. And that's an important thing to understand with HTML. Like how I would write things in HTML if I was being paid by a client is different than how I would write things just for projects that I'm doing on my own. Not because one is more functional than the other, but again, when people are going in behind you trying to understand what it is that you did, it's a lot easier if you use the standard HTML structure versus just type everything out and hope other people can understand. So that's a basic overview of the syntax and formatting for you. As always, I enjoyed doing this class and look forward to seeing you at the next one. If you like the content that I create, please think about going to eliTheComputerGuy.com and becoming a member or donating. Please understand that all of the educational videos are in front of the paywall. That includes the videos, that includes the notes, the diagrams, and the code example. All of that is freely available and in front of the paywall. But if you want to watch opinion videos or if you want to be able to comment, you do need to become a member. Membership is $5 a month or $60 a year and gives you access to those opinion videos and the ability to comment. If you don't want to become a member, you just want to give a one-time donation, there's also a donate button where you can do that. Please understand, in order to provide the education that I am, it does cost money. Servers cost money, equipment costs money, travel costs money. All of these things cost a reasonable amount of money, and the fact of the matter is YouTube's advertising program no longer supports creators the way that it used to. So if you want these classes to continue to stick around and you find them to be valuable, please think about either becoming a monthly member or donating a few dollars for this project.